Welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I founded an eco-conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, I don't just make pottery, I make resources such as books and courses for other potters who want to be more eco-conscious in their pottery practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about me sharing everything I've learned with you, and I can't wait to get started. Let's go! Hi everyone, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Tomlinson, and today I'm really excited to bring to you an interview that I had with a local Oxfordshire-based ceramicist called Emily Marston. So Emily Marston runs Emily Marston Ceramics, and it's me and Emily chatting about ceramics, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I really love talking to Emily, and yeah, I just found it so nice to hear how another kind of potter makes their work, the way where Emily's ideas come from, how Emily makes her ceramics, and just some things we just chat about, like pottery in general, the highs, the lows. Yeah, so I'm really excited to bring you this episode. And without further ado, here's me and Emily's interview. Hello, Emily. It's so nice to have you here on the podcast.
Oh, thank
Thank you
you for
so
having
much.
me.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm joined today on the podcast by Emily Marston from Emily Marston Ceramics. So firstly, Emily, tell us about your pottery business.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. So I've been making for around 5 years now, on and off around my young family. So I hand build sculptural ceramic vessels and also quite minimal porcelain jewellery. I make at home. We're very lucky to have a space in the garden. When we moved in, it was already here as a framer's workshop. So I kind of slowly took that over once I started making. So yeah, I make here in my garden in East Oxford.
That's so interesting. So you make jewelry and also you make vases as well. Is that right? So tell us about the jewelry, because I have really limited experience of making pottery jewelry, and I know you make rings and you also make earrings as well, don't you? So I'd love to hear more about like the way you make those.
Yeah, it was actually happened by kind of coincidence. Had rolled out a slab quite thinly and I'd cut something out the middle, and I was like, oh, that's kind of like a ring, ring size. And then I kind of cut round and then started to experiment. I was like, oh, maybe they could, be turned into something else. And then, yeah, it was just an experimentation from there, really. And I'd um, always loved jewelry, like from independent makers and things. So I was always kind of interested in that side of things. And yeah, so they're all made from a porcelain slab, essentially. And then I'll use coloured clay to roll in different patterns. So they're all going to be kind of individually patterned and coloured and all different. So yeah, I've also made some necklaces as well, in which I use will often use kind of silver clay on the inside, which I don't know if you've come across that
Do you know,
before.
I've actually never come across silver clay. How does that work?
So it's you can paint it on. So it's made up of recycled fine silver, so parts like old electronics and things like that. And then it kind of sits in an organic binder, and then so that means you can paint it on, and then so you paint it onto whatever surface you want to, and then you fire it to relatively kind of low temperature, like about 600 or 800 degrees, and then it burns off the organic binder and leaves the silver left. So yeah, that was kind of a really interesting discovery for me, and my mind was kind of going, what else can I do with this? Yeah, it's nice to have those, that it uses the recycled materials as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you fire your stuff as well, don't you, with renewable energy? You fire all your work with
Yes,
renewable energy.
yeah, I
Yeah, no,
do. Yeah.
that's so fantastic. So um, what brings you the most joy in your pottery practice?
Oh, lots of things. I think one of the things is, when you've been working on something or had an idea in your head for a long time, and you've experimented and it's come through the kiln and it's worked, that's quite a big joy, because uh, there is a lot of experimentation, isn't there, when you're kind of trying to get to kind of having the object that you've kind of had in your head for a long time. Um, I think I think one of the other things is seeing so working with other people through pottery. So I'm going to be running some workshops, and I've done a couple of tests, and it was just I just really loved having other people in the studio, and then just seeing what they created, and then putting their work into the kiln. And then when I gave it to them, it was just like a total joy to see, you know, other people, what other people had created and how different the other people's work was. And yeah, it's really, yeah, a wonderful thing.
That's so amazing about pottery, isn't it? Because it's like it's almost like it come like everyone's so individual, and then their pottery is really individual. So because there's so many different ways of making stuff in pottery, I think it's just it really allows you just the kind of like your real kind of own creative aesthetic to like come out, doesn't it? And it's amazing. I think even when you're very just starting out at pottery, like in the very beginning when you're just experimenting with like different ways of making stuff, I think even your kind of innate um the way you create, your innate aesthetic, like that comes out as well. So it's so amazing, even from the very first pot, isn't it, that you can see that in people. And yeah, I love that. I think it's that transition, isn't it, from like having made something from say like wet clay or something to then it being like a physical like fired object is like magic, isn't it? That's the thing which always
Yeah,
just yeah, really, like I just love it. It just like lifts my
yeah,
heart when I see it. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it always that kind of how much things change when you put them into the kiln, especially I find with the jewellery, because once the porcelain's dry, you can almost really not see the patterns that much because the colours are so muted. And then kind of when you open the kiln and they're all just kind of like bright, and it's just that change is just, yeah, really fun to see.
Yeah, completely. Because a lot of the glazes as well, they're the same, aren't they? You sort of dip something in and it's like some kind of, I don't know, quite often glazes all look kind of the same, don't they? Like a sort of grayish, whitish, kind of
Yeah,
powdery surface. And then, you fire in, it goes to like a bright color or something. It is amazing. It's like,
yeah,
it's just, yeah, it's an incredible process.
yeah.
Um, and have you faced any sort of challenges in your pottery practice?
I think because I'm self-taught, so I did do one Saturday class, which I mostly did flowing, which I really loved actually. But I I ended up uh, hand building everything. Um, but yeah, I think it feels like a kind of series of challenges in terms of in a good way, in that I'm learning from them all. Um, I think, yeah, I think it's a real resilience builder in that way. Ceramics. I think it's uh, I think I've found that I've got used to potentially opening the kiln and it not being what I wanted it to be, and kind of, okay, right, where do we go from here, and what do I need to change about that process? And And as you know, it can be so many, you know, it could be one of so many different things or multiples of those things. Yeah. So I think, and I think the other thing is kind of a level of perfectionism that I've just had to work with in a different way, I suppose, with clay. I've I definitely have a tendency towards wanting everything to be like just kind of so. And actually, there's a point with clay that I found that I've just had to say, it is a natural material, and there's so many processes involved here that there will be that element where things might look different to how I expected them to. And that's all part of it. Like that has to be part of that process, I think.
You know, I empathize with that so much. I think that whole resilience piece, I really just think, yeah, it really teaches you just to kind of like try, I guess, like to concentrate on like the process of making rather than necessarily the outcome. I think that's the thing for me. There's
Mm,
been so many times I've been really disappointed with the outcome, and then kind of try to think of it more like a practice, you know, almost like a yoga practice or something. And you know, some days as well it can be really frustrating because something that you think you cracked, like, you know, a couple of weeks before, and then you'll come to it again, you're like, why isn't this working today? You know, it's such a funny craft in that respect. I think the fact that you have to kind of just let go, surrender to the outcome,
yeah,
and like, you know,
completely.
really take it back to like the process of making. And yeah, I totally empathize with what you're saying about that that kind of like I get this thing where I'm like, how perfect does it have to be, you know, to be like
Mm,
let go as well. So
yeah,
you know, sometimes I think as well, sometimes if you're really used to kind of making pottery, you'll see a lot of like imperfections and stuff that maybe other people like might not see. They'll, you know, they might think
yeah.
it's like absolutely wonderful. And I think it's been a really good lesson for me just in terms of like knowing that pottery is like innately a kind of organic thing. You, like you were saying, it's like clay is like it's going to do its own thing, and sometimes it's really good to have almost like a kind of the imperfections are sort of like almost like the mark of like the fact that it was made by a human, you know, a human being, and it's gonna have those marks in it, or it's gonna have those like ever so slight differences, and that's actually an intrinsic part of the beauty of it. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
very hard. It's something I've really struggled with too, just when
yeah,
to let go.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I suppose I also like flip it over, and I think when I'm buying handmade work, I don't look. I buy it because I love it, and it's not. I don't look for the same things that I would look for in my work, and kind of like, oh, is that really supposed to be like that, or I just like, oh, I love that. It's a really
That's so
different thing,
true.
isn't it? Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, so I wanted to ask you about as well, like got really interested in this topic, like where kind of ideas come from. So like
Mm.
there's I've really been sort of thinking about my own ideas and where they come from, and they sort of sometimes they just pop in when I'm walking, or sometimes they come from me doing action, you know, if I'm practicing something, and then suddenly two things will be connected together. So I've just been really fascinated by kind of other creatives and like where you feel your ideas kind of come from.
Mm. Um, it's a really interesting one. Actually, I can really relate to what you were just saying. Actually, I think yeah, it's a combination of things, and yeah, often saying ideas will pop into my head when I do something that's kind of unrelated. So yeah, out for a walk often, um, or gardening, or like just something, or just yeah, cooking, like doing something that isn't related to pottery. I do find that I will take a lot of photographs when I'm out, um, uh, and then I don't, not that I'm thinking, oh, that could be related to this, or that could work as it could look good on a pot, or that kind of thing. It's more kind of just thinking about how objects will work together, or how the light's falling, or how that tree's next to that one, um, and and then I'll kind of see them all together, and there'll be like a visual I can't think of the word, like a fluency between something between that links them between them. And then I feel like that naturally somehow works its way into what I'm doing. So whether that's like the colours or the contrasts or, you know, the lines against the organic shapes and things, I feel like that will feed through from the kind of the photography side of things. But yeah, also, like you say, when you're making something, it's when you're kind of going through a process. I found more recently that I need to like if I'm making and I kind of get that kind of like, oh, maybe that could actually work better on its side, or that could be lifted up a little bit more, rather than just keep going and making the same thing that I'm doing and going, well, I know it's going to work like this. So, you know, I have that, there is that part element of me that wants to just do that. And then I think, oh no, actually, maybe I'll just, you know, change that a little bit, and things will just gradually develop as I'm making them. Yeah, I think there's that kind of experimentation, I think, is also for me quite important. I think yeah.
That's so interesting. I love that you take like lots of photos and then it kind of all like percolates and kind of like, oh, I love it. It's so cool. I think this thing about like kind of, you know, like allowing yourself to experiment whilst also making a kind of standard thing. I've really struggled like balancing those two things. You know, sometimes it's like you want to kind of just be, I don't know, just playing, and then sometimes, and then you think, but that's it feels to me sometimes that that's not it's not, it's like kind of opposite to kind of actually producing something. They sometimes
Yes.
feel like opposing things, and I think it's really good to give yourself like the space and freedom, you know, to do it, to do both of them, because I think that's definitely for me like where I can create better is if I allow myself like to play more, yeah, just try and think outside the like the standard thing that I'm making, like as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that um it's something that I really struggle with when you know when you're like, oh well, there's things I need to do today, and it feels like I just want to get on, and you know, and actually, yeah, I really struggle with like giving myself the time to be like unproductively make things, like, you know, or feels like it's unproductive but it isn't, that kind of just playing, like, no, it doesn't need to be an outcome. I do find sometimes that using another medium like collage or something like that can sometimes feel easier for me to kind of do it with no outcome, or like drawing with my eyes closed, or you know, that kind of just something that um, gets my hands doing something but without needing there to be something at the end of it.
Yeah, completely. In a different way as well. And I think if you're using your brain in a slightly different way, that can also unlock kind of a different way of thinking about pottery, can't it? So like if you're, yeah, like collaging or drawing, it feels like unrelated, but it's actually not, is it? It's all going into the same, yeah, the same kind of just generally helping that creative tap to be like open. I think it's a really good thing to do, I think. Yeah. Um, oh yeah, so I wanted to ask you as well, like whether you had any practices like that support your creative practice. So, for example, like I have this thing where, okay, I'm trying this, where I'm basically trying to keep all like the ideas that come to me in one place, just so I kind of know where to go to get them, you know. So I'm trying to kind of, rather than just leaving bits of notes around where I'm just like, where's that? Where's that idea that I had? You know, I'm trying to actually record them in one place. And also digitally as well. If I see something interesting, I'm trying to sort of keep a record of that, like interesting kind of links to stuff and things. And I have found that really kind of supportive. Just in terms of like, you know, trying to like record things as they come in, sort of thing, into my mind. Do you have anything like that, Emily, that you're doing, or yeah, anything that supports your creative practice?
Yeah, I think on a practical level, definitely keeping like sketchbooks and notebooks. I started to go back to probably what I used to do, like when I was at uni, and think more about kind of, so when I'm reading anything, putting those in within my drawings and things as well. So it's all in one place, because it all kind of feeds in. So yeah, definitely kind of notebooks and drawing ideas. And then I something that's kind of slightly less practical, but in terms of supporting my creative practice, I recently, at the start of the year, did the Artist's Way,
Oh, the
which
Julia
is,
Cameron,
yeah,
Julia Cameron book. Oh, amazing. Yeah.
and I've been meaning to do it for a long time, and actually, so I went through the process of it, and one of the things that has actually slightly gone by the wayside, but whilst when I was doing it was really it really helps, which was the artist dates. So it's like I don't know if you know if you've done it before. So it's a kind of a pocket of time essentially that you can do. I think she suggests a week where you do something that fills your cup essentially. So that might be kind of visiting a gallery or a museum, or watching a film, or reading a book, or anything creative, or going for a walk, and just having that kind of a non-negotiable bit of time to do something, and that and it's almost like, I think she kind of described it as spending time with your artist, and yeah, I felt that when I was doing that, there was definitely a kind of more of a flow of ideas. I felt more kind of that, and that experimentation came a lot more easily. Yeah, so I feel like that's something that I can get back to.
I love
It's
that.
hard.
I love that so much because it's sort of as well like giving yourself permission to prioritize like creativity in your life, isn't it? So as well. So
Mm,
it's like saying this is important to me and I'm going to make time for it and not just like squeeze it in. This is a really important part of like who I am, sort of thing, which I love that.
yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think and I think just that mindset saying this is important, and I think that then fuels like everything else that I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So just to come up to the last couple of questions, I just wanted to ask you if you had any kind of tips for other potters out there. So like a potter that's listening and they're looking at your work. It's incredible online and they're just, do you have any kind of tips for someone?
Well, I think this is a tricky one. I think it's I was one of the things I'd say is that I found the pottery community to just be like super, um, just like really friendly and welcoming, and I'm coming from not just not having, kind of learning myself through what I'm doing. Um, I found, I would say, just I don't know, asking for help with, or if there's any questions or anything, like people are generally really like lovely and just want to help other potters. So I'd say just yeah, ask any questions. And I think sorry, that came out really strangely.
I,
um
to- I totally agree with you because I think there's this. I love. Do you ever look at like glazy.org, which is this? It's this incredible website where basically everyone's just sharing recipes, glazer recipes, and glaze recipes can be. It's quite a palaver, isn't it? To kind of like make a glaze, experiment on on a tile or something, and fire it. And I love that kind of community aspect where people are like just sharing. They're like, look, I've put loads of work into this, and here it is for you, just to kind of, you don't have to do the work, sort of thing. I love that. Yeah. And I've always, when I've gone to evening classes and stuff, I've always found, yeah, people like the pottery community very it just feels like a very sort of safe place, like very kind and gentle, and I've loved that
yeah,
aspect as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. um
Yeah.
I think also, um maybe just that things can take time. um and I remember sharing something a while back, and something had cracked, right at the end. And actually, I hadn't even noticed it until I was kind of polishing the surface. I was like, oh, this is one of my favourite things I've ever made. And then there was this big crack right down the middle. Um, and I'd kind of made the point of, oh, things are taking a long time, and maybe that's because I don't have this background in this. And a potter friend had just said, look, it's part of the process. It's all right that things take time, and you just try and enjoy the kind of those stages of it, of the making and the experimentation.
I think that's such good advice, isn't it? That everything takes a lot. Like, I guess it's really good as well to be like to kind of sometimes, like, I have this thing where I sometimes rush. I feel like I'm rushing and I want things
Mm.
done, like, just through life in general, just like I want it now and I want to know how to do this now. But I think pottery is always undoing that, because it's like, oh, you think you know how to do that? No, you don't, and stuff. And it's kind of really good to be reminded of that it's like it kind of just brings you back, I guess, to the present moment, maybe. And that like, yeah, in the same way, like, say like something like yoga is, or something, or martial art, some kind of martial art that you have to practice for years. I think pottery is the same. I think it's more just about, like, just kind of the resilience, isn't it? Just to keep on learning, keep on going. And when things don't go right, it's okay. It's like, yeah, just carrying on, like trying to meet it with an open heart the whole time. That's kind of how I feel. Like, I try and have this thing where I'm like, try and cultivate like a sort of self-kindness. When things go wrong, I'm just like, well, this is all information.
Yeah,
More
that's it.
information.
Yeah, yeah. It's very grounding in that way, isn't it? You kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, right. I
Right,
can,
here we go.
yeah.
Here we go
Let's try
again.
that again. Yeah,
Back to the drawing board.
yeah.
Yeah. So, Emily, what's next for Emily Marston Ceramics?
So I'm working on a series of workshops, which I'm hoping to do the first one in early November. So I just wanted to create a space really where people can come with no experience needed at all, and just come and just come and experiment with the clay. We'd be making something in particular, um, and yeah, just a nice kind of calm environment. Um, so yeah, I'll be releasing the dates for those, but quite soon probably. Yeah. So I
Oh, I
wanted
love
that,
that.
and yeah.
So they'll be happening in Oxford, is that right? Your workshops?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to do something quite locally in East Oxford, uh, for the first ones anyway. Yeah. And I've also been experimenting with pigments that are made from soil. I did a workshop last year with Kirsty Van Noort, a ceramic paint workshop, which was it's just so interesting. And again, it's one of those things that just needs a lot more experimentation from my side of things, but that's something that I'm really interested in. Creating these natural pigments and also things that are that have like a real kind of sense of place, of where that wherever the soil is from will be, have these different colours and different feels to what you're making.
Gosh, that sounds so good. That sounds really up my street as well.
Oh
I
yeah.
love things that I've got really into recently, like plant ashes, and
Mm.
testing different plants, and they have like naturally occurring pigments from the earth where they were grew, basically. So it sounds really in a
Oh,
similar
yeah.
kind of vein. Yeah, that sounds so good. Oh, that's really exciting. So where's the best place for people to find out more about your work?
So I have a website which is emilymarstonstudio.co.uk, and then I'm also on Instagram as Emily Marston Studio as well.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's been fascinating to hear all about your creative process and how you make your pottery. And yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Oh, yeah, right. So that was me and Emily chatting about pottery, and I hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation about making ceramics. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of summarize with some interesting takeaways from me and Emily's conversation. So I think the first thing that I thought was when I was listening back, I thought was so interesting was just that this whole thing about kind of practice over kind of perfection at the end, that ceramics is actually a kind of a practice, and it's a practice in imperfection. It's a practice in kind of taking imperfect action rather than this, like, kind of perfect pot that you get at the end. This is where the beauty of pottery is. It's in the kind of the learning, the doing, the getting the things going wrong, the getting things wrong, the cracking of your favorite piece like Emily was telling us about. So that's where the kind of this kind of cultivating this resilience, this is kind of what ceramics is all about. It's about the process, enjoying the process of just making pottery. So yeah, I loved talking to Emily about that. I also loved what she was saying about, taking herself out for like an artist date. I thought that was like really good, and just kind of prioritizing. She's saying that, about prioritizing her creativity. And I think, yeah, I really think I could learn a lot from that. And that's something I'm gonna, yeah, cultivate more in my own creative practice. And yeah, I really found it was so interesting hearing about how Emily kind of like collects her ideas. She was saying about photographs, collecting those. And yeah, so interesting how just kind of learning how your own creative practice works, and then supporting yourself with those things. If you work more visually, maybe you collect pictures, or you work with more a kind of, you get ideas from taking action, or you get ideas from when they pop into your head, writing them down. Or if your creative practice works in all of those ways. I think it's really cool to kind of just learn more about how your own creative practice works. And so interesting hearing about how other people's creative practice works. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us in this episode of the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. See you soon. Happy potting until then. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me for the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Oxford Clay or eco-conscious pottery, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website. There's books, e-courses, there's a blog on there, loads of other podcast episodes, and I can't wait to share it with you. The web address is oxfordclay.co.uk. I'll see you over there.